Hey everybody, welcome to Two Comic Book Dudes. I'm sorry, it kind of threw me off. My daughter's downstairs playing the flute. She's playing the Star Wars theme song, so it's like, what a good intro that was. um, I'm Aaron Clutter, editor-in-chief of Comic Booked.
Hey everybody, Justin, managing editor of Comic Book.
And this week we have two very special guests, Eliot Rahal and Kendall Goode, who are creators of the Doorman. So welcome, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
So this is a great book. I picked it up a couple weeks ago at my local shop. It's from Heavy Metal, and it's really a unique story. It's a sci-fi story, but it almost doesn't start off as a sci-fi story. You kind of get this, guy who's retiring, last day on his job, and he's just always sat there in this little room and done nothing, and then all of a sudden his world explodes. So just you want to give us a little background on the story and kind of how you guys came up with this and go from there.
Yeah. Well, I've been working in comics for a little bit now, and I did the paybacks over at Dark Horse, and I've done
I love that book.
Backups. Oh, great! And I've done some backups for Valiant and such, and I've been, I'm from Chicago, and I was good friends. I was friends with Daniel Kibblesmith. Like, we ran in the same circles. We always talked to each other at comedy shows and stuff like that. Then my background was in comedy. And Daniel, when he moved to New York, he was working for BuzzFeed, and he did Clickhole, and he was starting to get published at Valiant, doing backups for Valiant in like the number 25 like anniversary issues. And some posted like, "Dude, I didn't know you wanted to write comics." And he's like, "Yeah." So I was like, "Let's write comics together." And he was down. And we've been working on some ideas, and this was our latest one. And it kind of spurned off of just a little nugget of a thought, which was basically intergalactic doormen. And then that kind of jumped into this whole thing where we were like, all right, well, like, we kind of like this idea. We like the idea of like jobs that don't exist anymore yet are still around for some reason. And go-tos are like bathroom attendants or film projectionists, candy girls, striped girls, stuff like that. And like, this aesthetic of like this Art Deco aesthetic that is like juxtaposed in a modern world. And that makes us sound a lot smarter than we are. So we were like, okay, let's do that. Let's do that, but let's put a bunch of crazy aliens in it, and let's make it funny, and hopefully give it a lot of heart and an actual story. Obviously we like humor, but the goal is to tell a story, not to tell a joke. So hopefully that comes across. And so we came up with the idea, and we were searching artists, and I came across a buddy of mine sent me a Tumblr, and I was looking at the Tumblr, and I swear to God, like, I thought it was a Star Trek comic, because there's I can never pronounce it, and
Ferengi.
Sure,
Ferengi.
Ferengi, fucking Deep Space Nine looked amazing, and I'm like, if this guy can draw Ferengis, he can sure as hell draw some crazy space goblins. So let's give him a call, and that is how Kendall got tricked into working on this project.
Basically, I am cursed, and now I have to work on this book.
That could be worse curses.
Yes, much worse curses.
Well, I'll tell you, I do love the art. It really is amazing. It definitely makes the book. I mean, the story is good, but that's one thing. And Justin and I have talked about this on other shows. That the fact that the story is good enough to hold you for a few a few issues. I always want to say episodes because I always feel like they're like shows. A few issues, but if that art is just not there, it's going to lose you.
Yeah.
And your art is just, I mean, especially the exploding heads. That's like your specialty, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you read, Invincible. Robert Kirkman's book. It's like that's like one of my favorite books. So Ryan Otley does the best like gore in a not horror sense of anyone out there, and like I'm super inspired by like how he does that, and getting the opportunity to draw ridiculous stuff in the Doorman, like like Eliot and Daniel Wright is part of my dream. So
that's cool. Well,
and let me state for the record, he is clearly the most talented person on the team. It's amazing. So much fun getting. It's so good.
That's funny. But they always say like every place you work, each person thinks they're the linchpin, but you're all work together as a team. I mean, if it weren't for you, he wouldn't have something to draw. So
yeah. The scripts I get from them, I just read issue 3's script, and it is like one of the funniest things I've read. And like that's what's so great about it is I am a fan of my own book. Like I love reading the ideas that they've come up with, and on my end I get the opportunity to build on top of that, which is really great. But like even if I didn't if I didn't have the opportunity to draw it, I would still love reading, I don't know, it's like a lot of humor, a lot of action, the sci-fi craziness, and it's all kind of like jumbled together in this like really cohesive form. And Eliot and Daniel do a really great job with that.
That's cool. Yeah, and Eliot, you mentioned the paybacks, and I know I read that book and I didn't even connect, but that was a great series. It's not over, right?
It's not over. We are Donnie and I are kicking it off again with a new #1 at Heavy Metal to kind of give closure to some fans who wanted to see some more. So we're excited about that. And I got a few things coming up, but I think I can't say anything else yet because the PR teams are getting mad at me. So
yep, no problem. Well, when you do, let us know, and we'll help you. We'll put you back on the show to talk about them. So that's cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the paybacks then for that to come back out, and that'll definitely get added to my pull. So that was such a cool book, just because it was really like the opposite of what you think a superhero book would be. They're indentured servants, really, which is cool.
Essentially.
So,
and both books kind of run, in my opinion, common threads, which is both are funny and both have a lot of heart, but both are the stories of people who you wouldn't hear stories from, and that's what I like about it. Like the paybacks, when you meet the paybacks, they're losers and they've lost. And we're going to tell that story. And the Doorman, his story, if you think about it, it's a footnote. And that's what I like about it a lot, too. I guess a lot of that is inspiration from like Futurama, inspiration from Douglas Adams. And I've been reading a lot more Neil Gaiman novels lately. And I can certainly feel that coming into my heart as well. Because he is my hero.
And I can see that. I can see that influence. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So we have a great book here. The Doorman is really cool, and #1's not too old. So, folks out there watching, you definitely can go pick that up.
Definitely.
Excellent quality book. Really, really great. I would recommend that. I read a lot of comics every week, a lot, and ask Justin. It's a lot. we do a haul show. Yeah, we do a haul show every week, and it's like 40 minutes, and 30 minutes of that is me talking about the books I got, and 10 minutes is Justin going, I got 2, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I work at a comic shop also, so every week, at least the number ones I have to read. So I definitely know what it's like to have a lot of things that you read for the week. I mean, there's like hundreds of books that come out every week. It's crazy how much stuff there is.
Literally hundreds of books.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's funny, so, we talked about this in prior shows as well, but the fact that if you think back to 10 or 15 years ago, and I've been working in and around comics now for 20 years, let's say, because I had my own comic shop back when I was 20 something. And the environment now is so different. Like, you guys could have put this book together 15 years ago, but there's no way you probably would have got shelf space with it at a comic shop and had it out there for people to see. Now, with the internet and with everything that we can do, I mean, the fact that we can put you on this show, and I'm in Maryland, Justin's in Georgia, Eliot, you're in Chicago?
I'm in Minneapolis now.
Oh, okay. And Kendall, where are you at?
I'm in Maryland also.
Oh, okay, cool. So, we're in different parts of the country, and we're all together here talking about this great book. You couldn't have done that 15 years ago. So I think
it is crazy to think that Jim Carrey's monologue from The Cable Guy is 100% accurate.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah. It is. Go watch it. It. It's true.
That is hilarious. Well, but I think it's cool, and I've had a lot of people telling me, "Oh, don't you think that the comic environment now is just like it was in the '90s? Aren't we getting oversaturated? Don't we have a bunch of variant covers and everybody's going with this?" And it sort of is, but it's not the same world that we were in the '90s.
There's a much bigger number of people who are succeeding outside of just Marvel and DC.
For sure.
Just like the top 5 companies. And then there's also just so many people doing, their personal books or independent stuff. Like, there's so much of that. And that's what's really nice about it. I mean, I've been to Small Press Expo in Maryland, and, they have such a good community of people who want to get involved in comics and to be involved in comics. And, like, it's an easy step to make as long as you just do it. And, like, previously, getting visibility on your stuff was so much more difficult, at least on a bigger scale.
True. Very true. Yeah, I like the environment now. I like that we have so many different outlets. And I think that comic shops in general, local comic stores specifically, are becoming more open to helping out small press to, like my shop. I mean, they're more than willing to put small press stuff up on a shelf in the front. So when you walk in the door, boom, there it is. And, to invest in stuff like that, to really help out and boost us, not to mention Kickstarter and all the other tools that are out there to help people fund something that they never could have done on their own before. So
I 100% agree. I've also been seeing comic book stores, and, I mean, I don't know if this is normal, but I've definitely been seeing comic book stores team up with local creators in terms of, like, media branding. Like, I'm talking with a local store right now, and we're thinking about, like, starting a podcast, like just a regular review podcast, using the store name and
cool.
And, like, out of that. And, like, I've definitely been seeing stores taking a really active interest in lifting up local creators as well. And I think that's really cool to see retailers, like, teaming up with everyone. And that's interesting just on my end. Maybe you guys see more of that because you all have worked with them, but it's just cool for me. That's all.
Yeah, well, and it's funny you should mention that because Comic Booked, our website, actually started as a store in Virginia Beach.
Oh, cool.
It's not there anymore, but that's how it started. So the owner of the store started the website, and then just everything kind of grew from there. So the store is now a different store, and they do nothing but Magic the Gathering, but we've taken off and run the site. So, yeah, I mean, it's things like that where the local comics shops can help, bolster or get you started, and then you can take off from there. It's pretty cool. And I'll tell you, the small press folks are the ones who share everything. Like when we review somebody or we talk with somebody on the show, they are sharing the video all over the place, or they're sharing the article all over the place. We talk with some of the bigger creators, and it's like, okay, send me a link to the video. I might share it, but it's like they don't need that. Whereas the smaller press guys, they need that, and that's one thing Comic Book is really focused on, helping the smaller creators, helping the new guys, helping the smaller books to get more coverage. And that's what it's all about, getting the good comics out there to people.
Yeah. Man, that's cool. That's really cool. I'm all for that, obviously. So.
Okay. Well, Justin, you want to ask a couple questions?
Sure. I mean, I was just going to say, like, where, I guess the Kindle, like, with this art being so awesome, like, where did you kind of draw this from, or, like, what's your inspiration?
I mean, I have so many inspirations. Like, a lot of the inspirations they mention as, being inspiring the story itself, like, Futurama, or even stuff like, Doctor Who or Rick and Morty. Those are the ones I kind of like when I recommend it to people. Those are kind of the things that I think fit well enough into what our book is, that we kind of like pull from. But there's so many things, like I saw some people talking about it and mentioning Men in Black, and and I had never thought of that, but then I was like, oh, well, yeah, definitely. Like, there's definitely that sensibility of, like, someone who is entering this world of, totally other like planets and aliens and all this crazy stuff that's like underneath what he thinks is going on. And I really, like, I found that really interesting, that like even as one of the creators, like, I'm learning more about my book from hearing what people have to say. But in terms of like my inspiration, I mean, like I said, Invincible, there's stuff they've done lately with just being on other planets. And I've always liked the space stuff in Invincible like a whole lot. It's like really fun. Invincible doesn't ever get like too dark in a sense. Like it reins itself in pretty well consistently. Right. And I really appreciate that about that book. And Ryan Ollie and Corey Walker, like the guys behind that, artistically are like some of my favorites. But I mean, I grew up reading Star Trek. I grew up, watching Star Trek. It's, a huge inspiration for me. And I try to, like pull from as much as I can. Like, I was designing a character, Eliot mentioned earlier today. And one of the things that came to mind was this character from a movie in the 90s that I remember watching on like Cinemax or HBO. And it had, I can never remember what it was called, but it had Christy Swanson in it. And it's like all these weird circus freak monsters. And it's just like,
I mean, it
I'm
really
looking it up right now.
Like, I know. It really looked like Dune. It really reminded me of something I'd see from Dune. Like, a lot of the characters that Kendall's been designing have been like really fun or cool or interesting. They're all dynamic. But this is the first character I was truly disgusted by. And it's a good thing though, because like, and I'll give you a little sneak preview. Like, the character's really cool. It's a cameo character that introduces another main character. So like, we use this guy sort of as like a foil or whatever, if I'm even using that word correctly. And he's supposed to be sort of an analogy. Are you familiar with Colonel Tom Parker at all? Colonel Tom Parker was Elvis's manager, and like, for real, this guy was a piece of shit. Like, he was an awful person. Basically took advantage of Elvis's career and like put him in situations that Elvis didn't want. And like, when you see Elvis in his later years, like doing gospel and like doing like the crazy tracksuits and like the Magic Mojo bag, like that's Elvis who's finally sort of been liberated from Colonel Tom Parker. He's gone a little nuts, but like he's finally doing what he's want. But Colonel Tom Parker was like genuinely a sleazeball, and like I get this character in who is like he's essentially a crazy ugly space worm, and I'm like, that's great. He was a worm. He was a worm, and like,
Well, I mean, yeah, I looked them up as I read the script. Like you'd mentioned him previously, but like I'd learned kind of a lot because I read through his Wikipedia. Just kind of get a sense of what exactly you wanted the character to kind of represent. And I mean, even without that, just looking at him, he looks like he's some sort of like man made of like worm parts or some sort of sack filled with meat. And yeah, that's what I tried to go for. So hopefully, when you see that character, that's what'll come across.
Oh yeah, and not for nothing, like not to get political or anything like this, guys. Watch out, but like Carlisle Moongale, for sure, we had a lot of Richard Bronson influence on him, like in terms of like Renegade Millionaire. But as Daniel and I have been writing it, like we've slowly started putting more Donald Trump in there because it's just so relevant. You know? It's just, how can you not do it?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely the second book, the second issue we've already kind of got a preview on, and that was that I saw some of that because you got, you have this, multi-billionaire intergalactic guy who has created a new source of transportation and decides that the best business is to shut down the old kind and not through conventional means. So that's kind of the, it's like, okay, I'm going to just squish you and we're going to build a wall. So
some of the best violence in a comic book I've seen is, I mean, I love watching one character get melted, but another character's head just disappearing and like his blood flowing out of his head, like it's like almost like a lava from like a fifth grade science experiment. It's so good. It's so good. I love it. It's so good.
It reminded me when we started watching Django Unchained, and it just reminds me of the Tarantino's always blood spraying and heads exploding. Same kind of thing. So I was like, oh,
it's so ridiculous, but it's so gruesome.
Yeah.
And like
so much of like the scripts you guys write, they are along the lines of, most of the time it's pretty much kind of like quirky sci-fi situations, and then you guys will type something like, take advantage of the fact that this is a heavy metal book. And, I try to take that to heart enough that, this isn't just cartoony characters doing, some cartoony things. It's, people, and bad things really do happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
awesome.
I'm really glad Kendall does that because, like, this is a heavy metal book, and, like, the comic, like, we really want to separate, and I don't want to get, like, too off track, but there's a lot of bad depictions of women in media, and we really don't want to do that here. And what we don't want to do is fetishize women, which I think we don't do. But at the same time, we still want to give it, the heavy metal vibe. And we're like, well, what is cool that heavy metal does? And it's like, oh, just violence. And, and I think we do that here in a way that people like and isn't offensive. And I think heavy metal has been doing a good job of coming out with comics that also accomplish that, like with Hoax Hunters, or with Interceptor and stuff like that. So they've been doing a good job of rebranding themselves for an audience that wants to read comics that don't alienate people.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like we embrace the absurdity of things without alienating what doesn't, like, and audience members who don't need to be alienated. Like, we don't need to,
Yeah.
you know, put anyone down, and at the same time, it still gives us opportunities to do some really wacky, crazy things.
Yeah. So you got the comedy and the brain smashing that you got in the Druna story without all the things hanging out.
Yeah.
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 And I'm also from the Midwest, and I personally, like, personal taste in general, I don't like all the things hanging out. Like, we put sweaters.
Yeah. Hey, I'm from the Midwest too, so.
Yeah, not even the thin leather strips, as long as you're covering all the main parts, right?
All right.
Yeah,
Like spikes and everything. Yeah. So, yeah, I used to read, Heavy Metal magazine back in the day, and I just remember, I mean, that was what it was. I mean, they were great stories, but there always had to be that extra little stuff thrown in there that kind of detracted from the overall unless Richard Corbin was doing the art, which then it was just amazing. But
yeah.
Yeah.
I like some of the Simon Business stuff too.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, we have our one big question that we have to ask you guys, and that is, what was your gateway comic? Like, what was the one comic that when you read it, you thought, I got to do this. I want to get into comics and write or draw or
be a part somehow, some way.
Yeah.
Sure. Kendall, won't you start, man?
I don't know if I have a specific. Like, I could name a couple of comics that I remember from when I was, a child, like really young. But I think a lot of it was like bleed over into Batman the Animated Series and the X-Men cartoon from the 90s. Like those two shows, like super into as a kid. And I remember making my own X-Men comic when I was like 5, and it was, stapled on the wrong side, and I didn't realize that until after I had done it. But
you never make it in this.
I don't know how I'm here. I don't know how I've done this so far. But
you don't have to staple your own books, see?
Exactly. See, the mistakes are made in other places.
Right.
No, like some of the earliest comics I remember, at least like owning, like one of the first comics I remember specifically being in a store. It was like a drugstore section of a grocery store, and there was a rack, and it was like one of the, I don't remember what issue number, but it was one of the early issues of X-Men 2099. And yeah, like at the same time, my brother bought a copy of it was X-Men the Early Years #1. So it was a reprint of the very first issue of the X-Men and like one of the early issues of X-Men 2099. Like the X-Men were huge in like to me growing up, and like those stuck with me for a long time. And then I don't know, like eventually it was like Astonishing X-Men. Like I kind of really think that like that was one of the first times like I knew that it was something I was like really, really into. Like I'd always read comics, I always loved comics. It was always kind of like my thing. But like reading Whedon and seeing John Cassidy's art, like that was, I don't know, it was just like such a solid product, such a solid story, and it all like worked so well together. And yeah, I mean, it's like one of the few things that's like just like really stuck with me as a comic that like, I want to do something like that.
Cool.
I didn't know we were counting TV shows growing up because certainly the X-Men animated series and the Batman animated series and the Ninja Turtles animated series were very big for me. I was also a secret Sailor Moon fan, and so I was like super into that.
Don't worry.
And Robotech was really cool for me too, and so was like the Gundam shows and stuff like that. And then I was pretty shy. So I didn't have many friends, and I didn't have friends who were into comics, so I read a lot of fantasy, a lot of C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and the Redwall series and stuff like
Oh, yeah.
that. And, yeah, I was so into that shit. And then then in high school, my buddy, I was friends with a guy who was like really into horror and comics, and he introduced me. So when I was around 17, my first comic book series that I finished in completion that like got me hooked was Garth Ennis's Punisher series, and then I was like, this is great. And so then I was fortunate enough to just get hit after hit after hit. Like, I went from that to, Preacher and The Walking Dead and Invincible and Sandman and, Y the Last Man, and just then into X-Men and then into Spider-Man and then in college, I kept reading, and I was reading a lot of the X-Men stuff, especially the Hope stuff when she was still a baby and like a kid, and that stuff I thought was pretty phenomenal, especially with Cable. And so I noticed that Marvel had internships, and I applied, and I got one, and I've been reading as many current comics and also the classics as I've had. However, I am a professional poor person, so I can afford so many things. But yeah, I mean, I probably spend $150 a month on comics, which is a little too much. But,
yeah, see, I'm lucky because I don't have to buy any of my comics.
I know.
I only get to buy what I want.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, I love it. I mean, there's nothing more comforting than sitting down and opening up a new comic book. It just walking into a comic book store makes me feel good. I guess it makes me. It's the only art form that makes me feel good. Like when I actually have private time to enjoy it and not stress out about the state of anything. You know? So, I mean, say what you will about Batman versus Superman, but man, I don't know about you guys, but those 5 minutes right before a Marvel movie starts or right before a DC movie starts, and they Marvel has its little graphic about all the pages flipping through, and DC does it. I still get goosebumps, man.
Yeah, just getting to see that Star Wars crawl with Force Awakens, that was that's a really
cool.
weird moment, to get that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm still a fan, and I hope that doesn't go away.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a fan for 20, 30 years now. I don't know, long time. So I think I started reading comics when I was 9. So yeah.
I'm jealous. I am supremely jealous of people whose parents let them read comics. Because my dad did not want me doing that. He tried to make me an athlete, and that did not work out.
Well, you showed him.
Well, I grew up on a farm. I grew
did
up on
you?
a farm in northern Minnesota. So the
where in
closest thing,
Minnesota?
Sabika.
I don't know where that is.
If you draw a line between Fargo and Duluth, it's in the middle of that line.
Oh, okay.
So,
My wife
way north.
My wife grew up in Alexandria.
Really? But my wife actually was in Alec for her first year of college.
Oh,
so she lived there for a year. Yeah. Of course, that was back in the early 90s.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind.
Yeah, long time ago.
yeah, that's good.
That's funny.
Oh, interesting.
So, the closest thing for me was a little grocery store in the middle of town, and whatever they had on the spinner rack, that's what I had to choose from. So, yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it's fun. Duluth is a cool city, though, but the in between it's pretty. It's Garrison Keillor,
Yes. Yep, we had I think the population of the town 770 people.
I see. I grew up in a town of 900 people in central
Oh, there you go.
Illinois, so I know
Yep.
what
Where
it's
did you
like.
grow up?
Yep.
Kendall?
My graduate.
I grew up outside of Champaign-Urbana in a small town
Oh.
called Mansfield. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my
Near where
graduating
David-
class in high school was 52 people. So, you know,
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Small.
know what that's like.
it's funny. All right. Well, hey, we've kept you guys a long time tonight. I appreciate the time that you've spent with us.
Yeah.
Great to talk to you, and really want to encourage our viewers out there to definitely go out and pick up the Doorman from Heavy Metal. Number 1 was out just a couple weeks ago. Number 2 comes out end of April.
Yep.
So it's an excellent book. Definitely recommend it. If you are interested in following Eliot or Kendall on Instagram or Twitter and all that stuff, we'll have all that in the information box here below the video, and as well as in the article that this video will set in. So we'll get all that to you. Okay.
Well,
all right.
Aaron,
Any?
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm excited that you like the book, and thank you for having us on.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Thanks a lot.
All right. And everybody out there, please like, share, subscribe. Definitely share this video out. You know, we always like to tell about great new comics, and we want more people to read them. So go read more comics.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody.